So, have you gone through last year's photographs yet and picked your favorites? Maybe not. Well, while you're thinking about that, why not pull up a chair and watch, because I like to share with you my 10 favorite photographs from 2014. Hello and welcome to 5 Minute Photo. I'm Bill Ferris. In this video, I'm going to share with you my 10 favorite photos from 2014. Now, they're not ordered from best to worst or worst to best. These are photographs that represent what I consider examples of my best work, and they're in chronological order. And they're not just my best works, but they're also photographs that have meaning for me. In fact, that's really the quality that helps them to stand out in my eyes and why I chose them. So let's get into Lightroom and have a look. This is the first photograph, and I title it simply White House. It was taken in February of 2014, on February 17th. It was President's Day, and I decided to make a special trip to eastern Arizona to Canyon de Chelly. Canyon de Chelly is a place where over 1,000 years ago, ancestral Puebloan cultures made their homes in these cliff dwellings, such as you see here in this photograph. In the lower left corner, there's a natural opening in the cliff face, and in that opening, which was probably carved out of the stone by water, in that opening is where those ancient peoples decided to build a stone structure to make their home. And what are the elements that resulted in me choosing this to be included in my top 10? Well, one is that it is the subject of a famous Ansel Adams print. And so this is a photograph I made in tribute to Adams, who is an inspiration for me. The qualities that I like are an organic feel to it, the soft, smooth, curving quality of the stone, of the cliff face, that Navajo sandstone. The vertical streaks of dark water stains of organic material that's been pulled down across the cliff face in rains and snow melt. And the lower left-hand corner, the White House ruin balanced by the patch of dark Arizona blue sky in the upper right-hand corner of the image. And so this is the first of the 10 photographs that are my favorites from 2014. Moving on to number 2, this photograph I titled Blue Curve, and it was taken in March of last year, on March 18th. That week I made a special road trip on spring break from Northern Arizona University, where I work. I made a road trip traveling the Four Corners region of the Southwest through Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico. On the second day of that trip, I drove up to Page, Arizona, where Antelope Canyon is located, and I took the photographer's tour through Upper Antelope Canyon. Now, Antelope Canyon is an iconic location. There are literally thousands, if not millions, of photographs that have been made of this place. And so I don't pretend that this is a photograph that stands out as being unique among all the others, but it is still special to me. It's special because, well, that was a challenging shoot for me. If you've ever been in Antelope Canyon, then you know it's a narrow, confined space, and you're competing literally with at least 100 other tourists in trying to get into a spot from which to make the photograph you're envisioning. This photograph and the others I took that day were all made handheld, so I used a fast shutter speed of 1/100th of a second, and in order to keep the ISO from having to climb too high, this was an ISO of 1600. I used an aperture setting of f4.5, which gives me a bit of depth of field, but not a lot of depth of field. And I actually like that quality. I think it gives it a feeling of a little more depth to have the foreground bluish tinted stone sharply focused, but the farthest background element slightly out of focus. I also like the diversity of color, the the raspberry or blueberry blue of the stone in the lower left portion, the caramel color in the middle, and the milk chocolate color of the upper right corner, and the softly curving lines contrasting with the crisp, sharp grooves. It's just a photograph that appeals to me, that has a softness to it, a liveliness to it, that belies a location of being a stone slot canyon. And it is the second of the 10 photographs I'm sharing with you today. Photograph number 3 is called 75 Mile Sunset. I took this photograph on May 25th, which was Memorial Day weekend last year. On that Sunday, I decided to drive up to the south rim of Grand Canyon to make a sunset photograph. Now, most overlooks at Grand Canyon have been documented in photography time and time again. And I myself, I enjoy shooting from those very same overlooks, and I enjoy the challenge of finding a way to tell the story of the view from those overlooks in a fresh and original way. But on this day, I decided to take a different approach. I did a short day hike through the forest to Papago Point. Now, this is not an established overlook and is not a place that is visited very often, if at all, by most tourists or visitors to Grand Canyon. And from my vantage point on Papago Point, I was looking east, northeast, up through 75 Mile Canyon. You can see in the distance the Colorado River. And on the south rim, if you look very closely, you may even notice Desert View Watchtower off in the distance. Now, it's that element of Desert View Watchtower that makes this a special photograph for me, because it helps make this a photograph that conveys the vastness, the sheer and immense scope and grandeur of this place, with the reddish tinged clouds overhead and the warm, rusty, earthy hues of a late May sunset painting the inner canyon walls. There's this tower that's about 3-4 stories tall. That's just barely perceptible off in the distance and gives you an idea of just how enormous Grand Canyon is and how impressive it is as a place. And it is my third of the 10 favorite photographs from 2014. Photograph number 4 is titled Mount Hayden Pastel. This is a photograph I made during a July 4th road trip to the north rim of Grand Canyon. This was a weekend trip, and I chose that weekend to go up to the north rim because the July 4th weekend is historically the first of the summer monsoon season in the desert Southwest, at least in this part of Arizona. And it's that hope, that promise of monsoon storms, the thunderheads, the lightning, the rain that adds such drama to a landscape shot that drew me to the north rim. Well, I got a bit more than I bargained for, because there was heavy rain, not much lightning, but there was hail, thick clouds that were so thick and persistent that at sunset and sunrise they often blocked the really good light. And so I wasn't getting the quality of photographs that I had hoped. However, on this morning at sunrise at Point Imperial, there were still clouds, but they were somewhat translucent and allowed through this soft pastel quality of light that painted the canyon in a color that you don't typically see, and helped Mount Hayden, the subject of this photograph, to stand apart from those temples and monuments that you can see in the distance. And for that reason, it's a special photograph to me from 2014. The fifth photograph from last year, halfway through the list, is titled Mesa Arch Glow. This was also taken in July and is part of a family trip to Rocky Mountain National Park. Now, for this trip, I was meeting my wife and son in Denver, Colorado. They were vacationing together in Niagara Falls and were flying into Denver. I decided to make a 4-day road trip driving up to Denver, where I would meet them and pick them up at the airport. On day 3, I drove north into southern Utah to the town of Moab, with the idea that I would photograph Delicate Arch in Arches National Park at sunset. Well, the monsoon clouds again blocked the really spectacular late afternoon light from painting Delicate Arch, so I didn't get quite the photograph I had hoped. And while driving from Arches National Park to my next destination where I would be making camp that night, I noticed off to the north where I had intended to go, there was a lot of thunderstorm activity. And so in that moment, I was tempted to simply head south into Moab and to get a hotel room and sleep in the following morning, because I had been getting up early and staying up late for 3 days. I was tired. The next day I was driving to Denver. It was going to be a long day. And I was so tempted to just get a hotel and sleep in. But I made the turn north and drove up to Canyonlands and found a campground just outside the park entrance. Well, I was setting up my tent and it started to rain, and I climbed into my sleeping bag that night. It was still raining. When I woke up the following morning at 3:30 a.m., it was still raining, and there was thunder off in the distance and the occasional flash of lightning. And well, again, I was tempted to just stay in the warmth of the sleeping bag and sleep through the storm and then get up in the light of day and make the drive to Denver. But again, the voice spoke to me and persuaded me to make the effort to get out of the tent and to make the drive into Canyonlands, which I did. And I drove to the Mesa Arch parking lot. And when I pulled into the parking lot, it was still an hour before sunrise, and I was the only vehicle there. Not unsuspected, because the weather was awful. I made the short hike with my headlamp illuminating the pathway to Mesa Arch, and as expected, I was the first one there. In fact, I was one of just a handful of people who showed up that morning. But we were rewarded with our effort because, as you can see, the clouds did break enough to allow that early morning light to paint the underside of Mesa Arch, to give it that nice amber glow. Now, this wasn't the intense, deep amber that you see in some photographs, but the other quality to the scene that this light brought was a haze that gave the appearance of an early morning sun cutting through the haze to illuminate the canyon floor beyond and in the distance. And this photograph is special to me because it's a reminder of the rewards of persistence, the reward of dedication to your craft, to getting up early, to going out and being in the right place at the right time, just being ready to capture a special moment if the light allows. This is the 6th of my 10 favorite photographs from 2014, and it is titled simply Family Portrait. I made this photograph on October 11th, and it was as a favor to a good friend at work. She had asked, and I had agreed to do a family portrait shoot with her husband, and their boys. Now, this was also a favor to me because for a while I had had an interest in doing more client work and also more portrait work, and this shoot gave me that opportunity. In planning the shoot, I talked with her, and she wanted to shoot outdoors, which is where I also wanted to shoot, to take advantage of the fall color in October in northern Arizona. We chose a location in the mountains north of Flagstaff, and on that morning we spent an hour making group and individual portrait shots in the forest, taking advantage of the logs and the light and the backgrounds. And I had a great time, and I think, as this photograph shows, they had a lot of fun as well. And what I like about this image is that it does capture their personality, this family's personality. And in particular, I enjoy the fact that the young boy is smiling. He was having fun on what could have been a dull and aggravating day for a young boy who would rather be outside playing with his friends. But he was having fun too. And that's one reason why this is one of my 10 favorite photographs from last year. Here's number 7. I call it Touchdown. This was taken also in October of last year, on October 25th. Now, I am a huge football fan, both the NFL and college football. And for a long time, I've wanted to do a photographic shoot of a football game. Now, at Northern Arizona University, where I work, on most football Saturdays, I'm at the game working for the television production crew. However, for homecoming last year, I had the day off. And so what did I do with my day off? Well, I decided to take my camera to the game and photograph NAU's homecoming football game. And it was a great experience. My knowledge of football helped me immensely during this shoot. It was early in the fourth quarter when on a series at Eastern Washington, the team in the white jerseys with the red helmets, they had the ball. When I walked past this location and identified it immediately as the place I wanted to be if Northern Arizona would have the ball for a potential game-winning drive to end the game. And that is exactly what happened. With a bit less than a minute left to go in the game, Northern Arizona University took possession of the ball deep in their own territory. They had about 80 yards to go, again, less than a minute to play to score a game-winning touchdown. And when that happened, I went straight to my spot, straight to this location that I had chosen earlier in the fourth quarter. And 3 plays later, I made this photograph capturing the game-winning touchdown catch. And for me, that was an exciting moment. I had more fun, more excitement working that game, photographing that game than working any personal project that I can remember going back for years. It was electric. And for that reason, this is among my 10 favorite photographs from 2014. Here's photograph number 8, and this was taken on October 29th of last year. I have long been a fan of Lowell Observatory. After all, the Lowell Observatory is where Pluto was discovered. And I have been an amateur astronomer, an enthusiast, and curious about the night sky since I can remember. And in fact, Lowell Observatory is the reason my wife and I made the move from Wisconsin to Flagstaff, Arizona. She took a position with Lowell Observatory in the mid-90s, and so we relocated to the desert Southwest. Well, on October 29th of last year, I made a trip out to the Discovery Channel telescope site to shoot a night sky time-lapse video sequence for a work project. Shortly after arriving and before sunset, I took some test photographs inside the dome of the Discovery Channel telescope and then promptly forgot about the test shots. You see, the purpose for the trip was, again, to make that time-lapse video sequence. And so after I processed that video, I put the project aside. Well, in December 2014, a longtime trustee of Lowell Observatory, William Lowell Putnam III, passed away. And the passing of this gentleman was hard for the staff of the observatory. So I was going through my archive photographs of Lowell Observatory, and I found this shot from October 29th. And I really like this photograph, and let me share with you why. With the dome shutter doors open, the ambient light of the afternoon sun is pouring in and framing the telescope in silhouette and giving it a glow, a clean white glow, almost the appearance of a mechanical angel of sorts. This piece of technology, because it's bathed in and framed by this clean white light, it brings a warmth to it, a liveliness to it, and for that reason, it touches me and it means something to me. It's a photograph that I shared with the observatory staff in tribute to Mr. Putnam, and for that reason is one of my 10 favorite photographs from 2014. This is photograph number 9, and I call it Juniper. I made this photograph on December 7th, and it was during a spur-of-the-moment trip to the south rim of Grand Canyon to photograph sunset. On that day, I went to Lipin Point, one of my favorite overlooks on the South Rim, and walked out to a stone perch, a place I'd been to often. And while bringing my equipment out to this location and beginning to set up, was paying attention to the late afternoon light and realizing that while it was a a fine and wonderful day to be at Grand Canyon. The light at sunset was most likely not going to be what I consider to be special. But I was there and I had my camera, so I was going to make some photographs. Looking around, I noticed this small juniper tree, no more than 2 or 3 feet tall, growing in a depression in the Kaibab limestone rock. Now, most landscapes that I shoot, I use an aperture in the f9 to f16 range, so I have great depth of field in the images I'm making. But this subject seemed best suited to a portrait shoot. And so I set the camera aperture to f2.8 so I would soften the background. And I chose a framing that placed the subject offset to the left while revealing the canyon in the distance, out of focus, off to the right. And I chose this framing so that that out of focus background would include the Colorado River, would include the buttes and temples and the late afternoon light softly filling the canyon, providing a context, identifying the location where this photograph was taken. I really like how this photograph turned out. It's a personal, intimate landscape portrait. And it's a photograph that has resonated with a lot of people. I've gotten a lot of feedback on this image. And for that reason, this is one of my favorite photographs of 2014. Here's number 10, the last of my favorites from 2014. It is titled African Spoonbill, and it was taken at Disney World's Animal Kingdom theme park on December 30th. This was during a family trip to Disney World. While we were planning the trip, I decided I wanted to try my hand at doing bird photography. Because while researching the theme parks, I was finding that they were popular locations for bird photography. A lot of birds can be found at Epcot as well as at Animal Kingdom. And so on our last day at Disney World, we spent about a half day at Animal Kingdom, the morning and part of the afternoon. And while exiting the park, this location was the last where I stopped to make photographs. A pool inside the entrance with ibis and spoonbills gathered together, waiting, washing, preening themselves. I like this photograph because, well, the buttery and soft texture of the feathers make you almost want to reach out and touch this bird. I like that it's in an interesting stance, exhibiting an interesting behavior of preening itself. I think that combination of elements presents part of the personality of the bird. And this was also a completely new kind of photography for me. And that was a theme in 2014 for me as a photographer. I pushed my boundaries, got outside my comfort zone, and tried new things. I did sports photography, football, something I had not done before. Family portrait shoots, client shoots, something I hadn't done before. More wildlife photography, including birds, again, something I had not before done, something that was outside my comfort zone. And I liked the results. I liked the feeling of accomplishment and of confidence at knowing that in these new situations, these new environments, I could still do good photography. And so I would encourage you to before 2015 is too far gone, take some time to look back on your photographs from last year. Choose your favorites. And while you're thinking about and planning your photography for 2015, I would encourage you to make an effort, an intentional effort to step outside your comfort zone. Take on a challenging project. Do something that might seem a bit daunting to you. You'll find the results rewarding. You'll build confidence. You'll develop new skills. It's a worthwhile endeavor. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed looking at my favorite photographs from 2014. I'm Bill Ferris, and I'll see you next time on 5 Minute Photo.